Good evening to all the brave souls of the Midnight Fire. Tonight, we are not just telling a story. We are opening a door to a place where time stands still, a place maps are afraid to draw. Have you ever felt, while driving at night, that the road has no end? That the trees have begun to look strange, and the landmarks around you have started to vanish? If that has happened to you, then you have likely drawn near to the town of Hollow Echoes. This story is long, heavy, and requires your focus on every single word. Because the devil is in the small details, focus with me. And let our journey begin. Adam was a young man who loved adventure. A photographer always searching for forgotten places. On a foggy night, returning from a photo shoot in the countryside, his GPS began to malfunction. It instructed him to turn right onto a narrow road that seemed to have no end. Adam, thinking it was a clever shortcut, followed the command and turned. After about half an hour of driving, he noticed the radio was emitting only white noise, punctuated by a faint and settling whispering sound, as if someone, somewhere, was counting down. Suddenly, the road just ended. There, in front of him, stood an old wooden gate with a sign that read, "Welcome to the town of Hollow Echoes, where no voice is ever lost." Adam got out of his car, and the first thing that hit him was the atmosphere. It was too quiet. There was no sound of crickets, no rustle of wind in the trees, just a complete, heavy stillness that actually hurt the ears. The houses were arranged in a terrifyingly orderly fashion, almost like a pristine film set from the 1950s. Laundry hung perfectly on lines, and sprinklers were still running on flawless green lawns, but there were no people. He cautiously entered the first house he came across and found a dining table set with steaming hot food, but no one was there. The strangest thing, though, was when he called out. Whenever Adam spoke or shouted for someone to reply, his voice didn't return as a normal echo. It came back to him a full minute later, and it wasn't his voice anymore. It was twisted into a tone of chilling, mocking laughter. Over time, Adam began to see the town's inhabitants. They weren't human, not really. They were like store mannequins, but made of something that looked like flesh and blood. Their skin was smooth and featureless. They moved with broken, jerky motions and stood watching him from behind windows, silent and still. Adam tried to escape, to run, only to find that every street he took just looped back to the same central point, the town square with the clock tower. And the clock. It was stopped at exactly 12, but its hands were moving backward. It was then he began to understand. This town wasn't an abandoned place, it was a trap. These inhabitants weren't evil. They were the remnants of people lost here before him. The town had siphoned away their features and stolen their voices, leaving them as nothing more than hollow echoes. Desperate, Adam found himself in the town's library. It was massive and dusty. He opened a book, but the pages were blank. Then, as his fingers touched the paper, a picture of himself entering the town just 2 hours ago appeared. The book began to fill with words all on its own, describing his racing heartbeat, his mounting fear. He discovered that the town was a living entity, feeding on the stories and emotions of those it trapped. The more you feared, the more the book's ink increased, and the more your features and reality began to disappear. Adam glanced at a mirror in the library and saw his own face starting to blur, to be erased. He was even starting to forget who he was. He had to break this horrifying cycle before the clock struck 12 backward, announcing that he had become the town's newest echo. Adam remembered something he'd read in the book: escape requires eternal silence. He decided he wouldn't speak, wouldn't think, wouldn't give the town any reaction at all. He closed his eyes and began to walk. Guided only by touch, the inhabitants were screaming all around him, using his mother's voice, his friends' voices, all calling his name, begging him to open his eyes. But he held his breath, kept his mind blank, and walked forward until he felt the familiar grit of a real road under his feet. He opened his eyes to find himself standing right in front of his car. The wooden gate behind him had vanished, as if it had never existed at all. Adam returned to his life, but he was not the same person. Every time he speaks, he hears his own voice come a split second late, as if there is an echo of him still trapped in that place. So, If you ever feel one day that your voice isn't quite coming from you, or that a familiar street in your area looks strangely different, do not enter. Thank you for completing this long journey with us on the Midnight Fire. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever gotten lost on a road and felt like time just stopped? Good night. If you can sleep.